Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Spotlight. This is, of course, our show where we talk to people in the pop culture space that make the stuff we love. And I am very excited after a series of unfortunate incidents trying to get this interview going to speak with Jo Duffy of Marvel Comics from what I consider to be the golden age when I was growing up. Jo, it is wonderful to see you. How are you this evening?
I am great. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And by the
Absolutely.
way, technically, I believe I'm part of what is called the Bronze Age of
Very good.
modern
Well,
comics.
it's it's gold in my heart. So
Well, thank you.
I'm shooting from the bottom here, but let's get right into it. Talk to me about how you got started, when you got started in the comics, and when you got started at Marvel. Talk to me about it.
Okay, well, the way it started was, I'm a baby boomer. So I grew up when the George Reeves Adventures of Superman was on TV. I was a little kid. I loved him for one thing, and this is perfectly true. He looked a great deal like my own father, who's my idea of a hero anyway.
Oh, sure.
So I was like, oh my gosh, my dad must be Clark Kent. He must go to the Daily Planet every day. And then at the end, during the titles, they would always say Superman, based on the character appearing in Superman magazine. I was like, wow. So Superman has a magazine like Time or Life? That is so awesome. And then my older brother Malachi, who's 2 years older and therefore learned to read 2 years before I did, began turning up with comic books, which I eventually realized were the wonderful Superman magazine I'd been hearing so much about. And as long as my brother was buying them, and then he couldn't guard them 24 hours a day, so I'd sneak into his room and look at the pictures, and then I was old enough to read, I read them. So that was how I got started, was the Superman TV show and the fact that my older brother was already a comics fan. So
Yeah.
that obviously was the late 1950s. And then, like most kids, I quote, outgrew comics at some point. But by the time I was a teenager, I was like, what was I thinking I'd outgrown these? The more I see, the more wonderful they are. So by the time I was in high school, I was back to being an avid comics reader, and I was writing to the letter columns, and ooh, they like my letters. They printed my letters. That's so exciting. They care what I think. They think I'm on the track. So I went to college. I intended to be a lawyer because there are a lot of lawyers in my family, and if you practice it ethically, what a noble, life affirming profession it could be.
Agreed.
I was like, what I really want to be is a writer. I'm sort of, I respect the lawyers. I love the lawyers, but I want to make stories. I want to make adventures. I want to write about heroes and adventures. So got out of school, reached out to Marvel Comics. Archie Goodwin, oh, God bless him, what a wonderful man. He was the editor in chief at the time, and he's like, guess what? We don't need people who are going to be the next Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and what have you. But what we need is people who can proofread. I'm like, ding, 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 I'm your girl. Bring me in, I'll be the proofreader. I came into Marvel as the proofreader. Um, I was also the person whose job it was to return original artwork to the artists after the books were published. This turned out to be the job of all jobs because A, I got to handle and look at and savor and appreciate every page of artwork Marvel published, and B, I had all this stuff that belonged to Jack Kirby, to Steve Ditko, to John Buscema, to John Romita, Sal Buscema, John Romita Jr., Marie Severin, you name them. I had their stuff. And they learned I would get it back to them as quickly as I could, and I'd go, oh, gee, I love Devil Dinosaur. Oh, gee, your work is terrific. Oh, I'm so thrilled and honored to meet you. And as a result, any artist who worked for Marvel Comics, I was on good terms with. I got to know them all, I got to meet them all. And inevitably, the day came when they're like, oh my gosh, if we don't have a script, the book's not going to make it to press on time. Can anybody write a script by morning? I was like, ding, 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 here I am. So I did a lot of, they'd have an emergency and I'd raise my hand and go, well, I'm right here, I'll give it a try. And that was basically how I got in. I got in by being willing to take a job that had nothing to do with being a superstar, and by being willing to be the person who'd say, well, I'll do the best I can and try. And that
With
works
grit.
out a
You have
lot.
grit. Yeah.
Yes. So,
Which was that's funny. That's one of those ads I remember seeing on the back of the Marvel Comics was Grit magazine. Was that a Marvel publication? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Grit, I don't remember. I remember pizzazz. I
Was
remember
that-
boom.
yeah.
I do not remember grit.
Full disclosure, I started reading Marvel. That's my next question. I started reading, and I'm going to jump ahead and then jump back to a different question. But I
Oh,
started reading Marvel in 1982. I was 6. I'm a bicentennial baby. I was born in
gotcha.
1976.
So you were
So,
basically born about the time I was proofreading at Marvel.
oh my goodness. But my very first comic was Star Wars 65, which I have a framed copy of upstairs in my house. Yeah, Galroth never forgets. A picture of Leia on the cover, standing around a corner. There's a Imperial officer coming at her. Um, and you were layered in that title. You were on that title for a very, very long time, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I loved that title. I mean, that's the thing. There were two things working in my favor, one of which worked against me, except I turned it to an advantage. Back then, the idea of a woman writing superheroes, although it had happened before and it was going to happen again, at that
Right.
time it was unheard of. So they were prepared to have me in the office. They were prepared to have me handling the artwork, proofreading the books, doing fill-ins. Nobody was going to give me a regular superhero title, but anything Marvel was publishing that wasn't Spider-Man or Thor or the Fantastic Four, it's like, yeah, Joe can do that.
You're right.
Meanwhile, I am an insane Star Wars fan. I was a fan of Mark Hamill back when he was on the Partridge Family or Owen Marshall,
Corvette
Counting
Summer.
Law, or The Magician, what have you. I loved Mark Hamill, so when I heard he was doing science fiction, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm there. And then Roy Thomas comes into the office and goes, oh, yeah, the guy who wrote those movies is co owner of a comic shop called Super Snipe, he and Ed Summer. And I was like, oh, so the guy who wrote American Graffiti is a comics fan, and it's Star Wars, and it stars Mark Hamill. Okay, I'm your girl. So the day Star Wars opened, my brother, Malachi, again, the comics fan, and we saw it the day it opened. I lost my marbles over it. Archie Goodwin was writing it. Roy Thomas was writing it. They had no need of, poor little salivating fangirl me, except that the minute somebody missed a deadline I was like, I'll try,
Pick
yeah,
up the ball.
I can.
Pick up
And
the ball and run with it.
I never officially got assigned to Star Wars so much as so many people missed deadlines that I did so many issues in a row that at some point I was just like, can we just please admit this is my book now and may I please go forward with it? And I think by that point I was probably also on Power Man and Iron Fist, which were Marvel heroes, but it was, basically a leftover kung fu hero.
They're right behind me. If you can see, I'm gonna point with my finger. There's Daredevil, there's the Punisher, and
Yep,
Power Man and Iron Fist are right behind him. I'm a big
all
figure collector.
characters
Marvel
I
Legends.
worked on and loved. But the
I know
point
it.
is, they weren't Spider-Man. They weren't,
Right.
they. It's like the sort of okay, the black exploitation leftover hero, the kung fu leftover hero. Yeah, the Punisher. What's he? He's an executioner knockoff who appeared in Spider-Man. I'm like, oh, I know what to do.
Yeah,
So
right.
my whole career at Marvel was mostly me raising my hand and going, I know what to do. Can I have a try? And then if it didn't
Wow.
work, no foul, no problem. And if it did work, they're like, maybe we better put this in the hands of somebody we could rely on better than you. And suddenly there'd be some other writer on The Punisher, some other writer on whatever I had done. But my whole run at Marvel was, oh, there's nobody else here, but here I am. Can I try that?
You're the cleanup hitter. That's an expression they use, and I'm not a big sports guy, but that's in baseball.
Yeah, I
Really,
guess I batted cleanup. You're right,
yeah, you're
but
absolutely killing it.
I had a
So,
great time doing it. So
yeah, speaking of, I'm Spider-Man is my jam. I started with Spider-Man in 86, 87. And my first new issue, this it's funny because this is kind of a question but not a question. My first new issue of that was 278, which was you, along with Peter David, God rest his soul, and Tom DeFalco, all three of you writing this issue, which was it was like a weird place to start reading it. But I remarked this to my wife before I came down here to record this. I said my favorite question to ask her is going to be, how do three people write one comic? Like what? I mean, and I know that's probably, I don't know if you even really remember what that's all about.
Oh,
No,
I
you're shaking your
remember
head.
exactly.
Tell me,
We
please.
had
I'm dying to know.
such a good time. My recollection is Tom had done the plot from which the artist had done the story breakdowns, but he was absolutely over his hairline in a deadline and couldn't finish it again in time to get to the printer. So Peter, Tom and I are friends. Peter and I were really good friends. And Peter's like, Joe, you and I could do this. If we can do it overnight, this book will still get to the printer on time. I was like, great. He said, look, I've already been writing Spider-Man, but I'm not interested in superheroes. I'm interested in characters. I want to write all the stuff I care about. So he's like, let's divide up the book. So if it's Peter Parker, I do it. And if it's Spider-Man, you do it. Now, that could not have been more fun for me because as far as I'm concerned, with all, Peter Parker may be Charlie Brown and this, that, and the other, and I love him, always have. But Spider-Man is Bugs Bunny. So for me to be able to write Bugs Bunny in superhero tights overnight and save the day and be working with Peter and Tom, I was like, yes, please sign me up. And I have never had more fun or less hassle on any project than I did on that issue of Spider-Man. It
That's
was
so wild.
so much. I had such a great time.
And I have that, and I had pointed it out to my wife April before I came down there. I said, "Bam, it's right in the den." I have it framed just because it was my first, and I think it was the first newsstand copy I got before I then this was the thing my mom got for me between that age, so I was like 10 or 11, and like 18 when I graduated and went off to college. So I had a subscription to all of the titles, so they all came in the mail, and it was even before they were plastic wrapped. They used to come in that little brown paper that
Yep. Oh, yeah.
God forbid they went in the mailbox and it was raining. But yeah, that's what we had.
Folded double and stuffed in the
Folded and
mailbox.
just slid in there. But yeah, I never, as they always say in the advertisement, never miss an issue, and I never did. Oh my gosh, no, that is absolutely incredible. Let's see here. So you've worked on like absolutely everything, and you've touched on some
And now
things.
you know why.
And now I know why. The cleanup hitter. That's it. That I don't want to say that'll go on your tombstone because that's a very
Oh,
morbid thing to
why
say.
not?
But it totally could.
Came in and saved the day, that's not a bad epitaph.
Save the day like a superhero. But looking at the background, I see projects with Marvel UK, which says you published the first solo Wolverine story. Within that, and the first woman to do so. But
Yes.
I'm curious, how did Marvel, the Marvel that we know here in the United States and the UK, what was the relationship like? Like, were they reprints? Were they originals? Like, what did that all look like?
Okay, Marvel UK and Marvel US had two different tracks going on. One was Marvel UK did a certain amount of original material, things like, Alan Davis on Captain Britain and what have you, and I think Miracle Man and some of the things Alan Moore did. That was original for the British market. But Marvel UK also published reprints of the US books. Now, that Wolverine story is a very funny thing. Even though I've been working at Marvel forever, they kept making me audition. And their auditions in those days, it was always 5 pages, self-contained, or do an adventure for this hero. So I had a Wolverine. Why Wolverine? For the simple reason that although he was not a hot or even a well-known character yet, we're talking that long ago, I loved Wolverine. And I was like, I've got a great idea for a Wolverine story. So we did it. George Perez, who was such a dear friend of mine.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, Ken Landgraf and I did the story. Hi, Ken. George was my friend, my buddy, my pal, and he liked the story. He's like, guess what? I'll come in with you guys and I'll ink it. And Ken's layouts were fantastic, but with George on there, it was not merely fantastic, but beautiful. So we did the story. We had a great time. It guest starred Hercules. Life was fun. And then it sat in a drawer and never saw the light of day. It sat for years and years and years and years until our pals in Great Britain were like, well, we need 5 pages of Wolverine. Give us that. So they published it first. That's what happened there.
Wow. Gotcha. I wonder if that exists. I have the Marvel Unlimited. That's how I read Marvel comics now. I'm wondering where that would be because I'd love to see it. Do you have any idea where it's printed or reprinted?
It was in a Marvel Treasury edition, one of those
Gotcha.
big double size. It
Yeah.
finally in the US saw the light of day in a Treasury. Beyond that, frankly, I don't look at pub dates. I look at
Yeah.
when's it due from me to the into the office.
Right.
And that's how I've done
I'm gonna
everything.
have to do some digging. It's got to be. It's somebody has to have reprinted it at some
Oh,
point. So
absolutely. It's seen print a number. Once it's all print a lot.
right.
So
Awesome. So again, expanding on that, huge bibliography, touched every character, the cleanup hitter. You've told a lot of stories about things that you absolutely loved and people that you worked with and people that you met. What's something that you've done within Marvel, maybe even outside of Marvel, that maybe you haven't touched on yet that just really is like, I really made it, or maybe even something that you're like, my God, this was a challenge. I can't believe I made through it, or that was really rough and I was glad when it was over kind of situation.
I don't look, I love writing, I love superheroes, I love comics. So the challenges never have to do with the work. They sometimes have to do with the jerks. There's some people you deal with who just make things unnecessarily difficult. And if I've had any issues or problems along the way, it is never with an artist I was working with. It is sometimes with somebody who was just in there. It's like, why should I let you by when I can be the roadblock? If you want to cross this bridge, answer me these questions three.
The troll.
Yeah,
These
basically.
questions three. What is your favorite color?
Plaid.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. All right, I have a bonus question before we start to round on. I was talking with my partner Kurt, who does a lot of these interviews with me. He may have interviewed at some point in the past because he knows everybody. Kurt Krug is
Okay.
his name. He's another Michigan guy like me. He wanted me to ask you about a time that you spoke to George Lucas himself about a Star Wars story and a plan to rescue Han Solo. And I've read all those comics, but it's been years, so I don't remember the story.
I have never, this makes me sad, but the reality is I have never had the pleasure of speaking directly with George Lucas. There was always an interstitial person who told George what I said and told me what George said.
So you'd be passing notes.
Yeah, basically there was, well, again, it wasn't a answer me these questions three, but it was like, George says he can tell that you're thinking of doing so and so and he wants you to stop.
And that's what that was. So
That's what
was
that
it in the
was.
book? Was it in the book like obviously
Well,
between like
they
Empire and
were
Jedi?
they were really lovely. They were, when they knew what was going on, they were very clear with my you may not, you must not, you cannot. And again, huge Star Wars fan. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to break the rules because it's their stuff and I'm thrilled to be working on it. But I'm a Star Wars fan. I know what we all want to see. So what I'm going to do is tease my fellow fans into thinking we're going to address stuff that's obviously got to be done in the movies.
I feel like I know what the story is. It's coming back to me. I'm gonna let you talk and then we'll see if I'm right.
Well, it's the block of carbamite, but it wasn't
Yes.
the one with Han Solo in it. We decided to put uh, Cheeto. Who was
Chindo,
Cheeto was his name.
like Chester Cheetah, but
Uh,
he's a Rhodian, so he's
Well,
he's
the
like
thing
Greedo.
is, the first one was Greedo, so I was like, well, if his name is Greedo, then we got to take.
Cheeto's his cousin,
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly where I went. And
half
we're like,
brother.
we'll have a block of carbonite, but it won't be Han. We're just going to make them think it's Han, and it'll be somebody else, and we'll fool everybody, and they'll be salivating chasing that, and it'll be a fake out, and they'll
Yes.
like the story. And then the interstitial person came back to me and said, George can tell you're thinking of flirting with forbidden issues and he's warning you to stop it.
The
And
forbidden
I was
fruit.
so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm obeying his rules, and yet I faked him out. So if I faked him out, I'm going to be faking everybody out. And I was ecstatic
Sells
because I
books.
was not
I know.
contravening the rules, but I wanted to give the whole world the impression that maybe I was going to. And the fact that I faked out the head guy whose stuff this was, it's like, okay, if I can't actually tell the story, if I can at least trick the big guy into thinking I'm going to try to tell the story, I'll take it as a win.
Absolutely.
So if that
Oh,
was the story you were going for, that is exactly what happened there.
that's awesome. Yeah, you spun me right into it. I'm going to go. I've been meaning to sit down. I have this little summer reading project. I'm currently reading, rereading every, because I've read every issue of Amazing Spider Man. That's my pat on the back
Yay!
because of Marvel Unlimited. But I'm reading all of the issues from the 1970s right now. And I'm at about, I actually read the issue today that was a month and date, the month and date that I was born, Feb 1976.
Wow.
But I've always told myself I'd love to go back and read that Marvel Star Wars run, the very first one again, because it's all on Marvel Unlimited. So I think I might have to jump ahead and read the run that you're talking about because I remember it so fondly. I think it was in the 70s, and I started with the numbered 70s, like maybe 72, 73, something like that, when I started with 65. So that's totally awesome. Well, oh my gosh, that's kind of the sum total of mostly what I wanted to ask you about. It was so incredible to have you here. I feel like we could talk for hours. But what are you working on these days? What's going on with Joe Duffy?
Um, Jo Duffy is sort of out of comics, not happy about it, but
Mm,
it's not my choice. You know, suddenly they're like, oh, we'll toss her a bone, we'll let her do this, we'll let her do that. And people were soliciting work from me. But then, well, we'll decide if we want it after we see what you've done.
oh
And
boy.
after that happens a bunch of times, I'm kind of like, A, do you know who you're dealing with? And B, kind of a basic up yours, you know?
Yeah.
If you
I don't
think
blame
you
you.
know these characters and this stuff better than I do, you're wrong, but you're the person who has the job, so you're the boss. But at
Yeah.
what point am I going to stop letting you jerk me around? And it was
Yeah.
clear I was being jerked around.
Oh man.
So
Oh,
at
I'm
this point,
sorry.
no, I write fiction. And
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm going to publish it myself, and so far I haven't, which is ironic because it's what I've always wanted to do, and now the means is there. And I think, you know, it's like, okay, you've got all these original characters and stories you've already written and what have you, and we'll see if somebody wants to read some of it. I hope they do, but if they don't, at least I'm still writing it and enjoying it and
Good
my
for you.
own characters and what have you. So, writing original fiction, and also anytime somebody wants an essay or a short story or a short comics piece, I'm always open to the conversation. For the record, you know, drop a question on my Facebook page, and chances are I'll get back to you at some point because I'm interested. But I'm not counting on anybody setting me up in my next act as a creator. I am a creator. I'm
Yeah.
a young creator anymore, and
Yeah.
you know, I just want to tell great stories, and that's
Right.
all I've ever wanted, and it's what I'm still doing. And frankly, what I did for Marvel is what I always do, which is I want to break your heart, but I also really want to make you laugh. I want to be extremely silly, and then I want to make a point if I can. Let's have some
Yeah.
action, let's have some fun, and let's see if, you know, okay, here, this is a silly thing. I was at a convention 6 months ago, and suddenly on my table, I found, oh, I brought a pile of Zen Intergalactic Ninja, a novella I wrote for them ages ago.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
sat back and reread it and found like three embarrassing either editing or typographical errors I'd made. But
Oh
I was like,
no.
damn, I wish I had the right to reprint this myself because I love this story. But meanwhile, I've still got copies of it. It's called Bubble Economy. Billy Mouse did great illustrations for it. And I love Zen as a character, but it's like, how did I do a Zen story? Because Steve Stern reached out to me one day and said, you want it? And I said, sure. And they gave me a little bit of money and a pile of copies. And I've still got the copies and reading it decades later. I'm like, damn,
Oh man,
this is some enjoyable stuff. I'm really proud I wrote that.
that's awesome. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. So if people, so you are on the Comic Con circuit, so you do shows from time to
absolutely.
time. Okay,
And
and
for a
they people
while,
can
I
find.
wasn't able to because I had, oh my gosh, big scary health crisis
Oh
a couple of
no.
years. Oh, put me in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
But guess what? Happy ending. I got out of the hospital. I'm fine.
I
But
love it.
I have to be a little bit cautious going
Oh
forward
sure.
because, when yeah, I'm a baby boomer. When a baby boomer's been in the hospital for weeks on end, which I was,
Oh my
they
gosh.
know to pace themselves a little bit after
I
they
hear
get
you.
out.
I hear you.
So here I am.
So
Yes, I
if
did.
people want to know where to find you, they'd see that on your Facebook page. Is that the place to
Facebook.
track
I
you down?
keep meaning to set up a website, but so far I talk about it and don't do it. And
I hear you.
generally, somebody who drops an inquiry on my Facebook page has or maybe two, has
Okay.
has a chance of reaching for me and
Yeah.
hearing back. Absolutely.
And that's how we went. Well, cool. Well, I will have a link to your Facebook page in the show notes
Well,
for
thank
this. But
you.
my God, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go read some Star Wars comics right now. I
Thank
can't
you,
help
Charlie.
myself.
I
It's absolutely great
appreciate
stuff.
it. I really
Absolutely.
enjoyed this.
You bet.
Anytime.
Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in. And again, please visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, where you can find absolutely all of our spotlight interviews. We've got approaching 100 of them there,
Wow.
including my awesome conversation with Jo Duffy. Jo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you out there.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.